Michael Johnson, and the title of his talk is Extending Power BI with R.
All right, welcome everybody. So my name is Michael Johnson. I am primarily a business intelligence consultant, as my title might suggest. I'm probably the person in the room who knows the least about R. Experience is limited to a couple of Coursera courses and a couple of other sort of expositions. But today I want to sort of speak more about the extensibility of R, because as good as a tool is, it's only as good as the people that sort of use it and we begin to apply it. So for those of you who don't know what Power BI is, essentially Power BI is an evolution of the greatest BI tool or self-service BI tool that's ever existed, as we've already alluded to. It is Excel. That is where the vast majority of sort of reporting comes from. Sure, it might lack finesse of other languages and the power, but it is accessible. I think we had a speaker 2 sessions ago who sort of spoke about those challenges. And the truth is that Mary in accounting is using Excel. She's not using R, she's not using something like SQL, she's using Excel. Now, Excel had a couple of challenges to it. Anybody that might have used R in the past, Excel in the past, might have realized you couldn't import things like more than 1 million records. It also had a terrible way of performing data mashups. Pretty much that came down to VLOOKUP. Okay, sure, there were a couple of other ways, but it wasn't great. So Microsoft sort of realized that, hey, they had a great tool, but it had problems, so they needed to extend it. So they introduced something called Power Pivot. And Power Pivot is this, firstly, it's a column stored table. So we're talking about high compression. And this meant that we broke away from that million row table. And we can import as much data as well as we've got memory. So similar situation to R. It's also an in-memory database, so another similarity to R. But one of the things it does differently is that we actually have this ability to create relationships between our tables. So in R, we sort of load tables in, and then we might use different functions to perform those mergers, but Power Pivot can do that natively. It also has this ability to create calculations over our entire model, and this is important when it comes to this notion of a semantic layer, because if we think about R or any other tool, well, I need to understand how I'm going to use that model. But when it comes to the business user doesn't care. Okay, I don't care how you define profit. I don't care how this is applied. I want to drag that onto a pivot table. Okay, pivot tables are the number one tool of choice, and that's a reality. Okay, sure, companies like hiring smart people, but everybody else kind of likes using pivot tables. Okay, the problem with it is, so anybody here actually designed beautiful reports in Excel? Well, of course not, because Excel doesn't make beautiful reports. Okay, I think it has about 3 or 4 charting options. No, the best design choice you have in Excel is obviously the pie chart. Much derided as it is, it almost makes sense to every business user. So Microsoft needed to extend that, and they brought in Power View. Now, Power View is based on D3. So I'm sure many of you know what D3 is. It's essentially a JavaScript visualization library. Microsoft obviously had to change it a bit, so they switched over to TypeScript, which is a stricter version of JavaScript, so that they can use it in their products. And this brought a new sort of generation of visuals. And then finally, we had Power Query. So in Excel, we had 2 ways to get data in there. You could sort of import data from a database, okay? Or, if you did what everybody else did, you copied and pasted. Okay, now copy and pasting is obviously not a very repeatable process. So this often led to situations where office workers would often dedicate 3 or 4 days a month to producing the month-end report pack. Okay, now this is not exactly a scalable solution. So Microsoft realized that they had kind of a winner, but has anybody here actually heard of these 3 products? Okay, maybe I have. Okay. Well, now you have. Now you all have. Okay, but the truth is that they weren't visible. They weren't usable. So Microsoft packaged all this stuff and made up created a new product called Power BI. And Power BI has sort of really taken the BI world, to use a catchphrase, by storm. Okay, and it's quickly sort of become a market dominator. And it's really done that by looking at 3 things. It's really created this compelling story, because we've got stories up in the cloud. We've got this on-prem story. You can be part of an organization, or you can be standalone. You can be a licensed perspective. You can use it for free. You can just download it. There is no licensing like things like Excel had. You can use the cloud version, which can cost a lot of money, but you can find the SKU that meets your needs. And we're getting integration with more and more tools. And one of those is obviously going to be R. But we, very quickly, natively within the application, we're getting things like natural language query, custom visualizations, live dashboards. Okay? And then finally, there are the different audiences that we're going to interact with. And really, what this has led to is Power BI being currently ranked the #1 Gartner product, overtaking Tableau last year, or perhaps a year or two ago. So Tableau is obviously a very popular tool with a sort of very fanatic market, if that's perhaps the word to use. Power BI is struggling to get into that particular market because nobody wants to leave. Okay, very much like Apple, but that's a good thing. Okay, but Power BI, for all of its good and bad, has a couple of limitations. So that was the end of the marketing spiel. So let's talk about some of the shortcomings. Okay. One of the limitations is a lack of data sources. Now, the Power BI team are doing a fantastic job of bringing in new data sources, generally about 2 a month, okay? And in Microsoft's world, that is fantastic, because we used to go 3 or 4 years without sort of a change to the product. It wasn't like, oh, we had this community contribution. Okay, so we're growing, but, there is no support for Parquet. Connecting to web services, it's still difficult, iffy at best. The other problem is visualizations. So the visualizations are certainly better. We've got about 30 visualizations that are there by default. We've got about 200 in the store, but it's still not at our level. And it's never going to be at our level, to be honest, because, well, there's probably more charts in R than there should be. You're getting that sort of density, Okay, so you've got to watch yourself in front of the R audience. Okay, so essentially there is a great extensibility story between Power BI and R, and that's kind of what I kind of want to show you. So I'm going to go do a very quick demo. The nice thing about my demo is, unlike everything else you've seen today, I have 2 lines of R, no math, and yeah, okay. Those 2 lines of R are also nothing to write home behind. Either. Okay, so this is essentially Power BI. No, that's not Power BI. That's PE. Duplicate. All right, this is Power BI. Okay, so Power BI is a desktop application. All right, and it is where you generally do all of your authoring. It has a cloud component. We won't really speak about that today. We're going to show that in integration. Before you get started with R, one of the things that are pretty important to do is you need to go and set up your environment. So we've got an options tab here. And under the options tab, we have our R settings, so R scripting. And from here, you're going to choose your R installation. Nothing different than what you can do in R Studio. Okay, because obviously Microsoft has its own SKU of R Open. I'm not sure how much traction that has. Not much. None. One guy, welcome, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go and choose our R environment, and really, why not use Cran R? We can also set up our editor. So that's a bit of a housekeeping. It's going to be a once-off effort, and then we're going to get integrate into R. Now Power BI has a very different design model to something like R. Okay, because what we're really trying to do is build this memory, this model. This end memory model, and this is where our power is going to come from. Our ability to extract data and cleanse it. Our only objective really there is to load data into this model. And once we've got this data in the model, we're then going to build aggregations and we're going to build visualizations. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I kind of see the model within R is those data sets that sit in memory before you build a visualization on top of it, and while you've sucked it out. And it's almost an inconvenience to the R developer because they take so much space sometimes, versus it is the true power of Power BI. So in order to build these models, we begin by going to the Get Data tab. You'll notice that this experience is exactly the same in Excel, and you can actually do this in Excel as well. So we're going to quickly go and say Get Data. And we support a rich range of data sources. Again, not necessarily as rich as R. So you can see there's a whole list where we connect to file types, databases, the Power BI service itself, various online services. So these are configured for API access, but again, a limited set. Then we have the other category, which lists all those unsupported, undefined versions. And most importantly, right there, we have this idea of an R script. Okay, so we can go and generate our own R. And as I told you, I am not an R person, so I've worked all night on generating this import package, which imports a CSV file, just using read CSV. Now, Power BI can connect to CSV, and I think you've spent the whole day seeing people far smarter than myself connect to data, import and cleanse it. I just want to show you that this is a package that everybody would be somewhat familiar with. And I'm just going to go and grab that line of code, and I'm going to import it. If I might. Okay, so we've got this essential little R script. Now you can put your own R code in here, or you can refer to a script. And really, that's the design where you're really going to go. You're going to design your script in something like RStudio that actually does this well. Okay, and then you're just going to refer to the script. I'm just going to paste my script in there. And the way this is going to work is Microsoft's going to pick up, or Power BI is going to pick up all of the data frames that you have loaded using your R script. Now, obviously, we can create other types of data frames. So I'm just quickly going to go and define a new data frame. If I knew so I lied to you, there will be 3 lines of C. What's this language called? R. So I'm going to tell you exactly how bad the situation is getting is because Microsoft has its own transformation language, and it's called M. Okay, so everybody's liking these little one-liners. Okay, so I've essentially gone and defined this import process with 2 data sets. I'm going to import the data, click OK, and it's going to import. Now what it's going to do is it's going to bring up a navigator. So this navigator is just going to tell me that I can't type R, and that's kind of embarrassing, right? So one-liner, I'm just going to delete that. Okay. So there is a saying, don't do live demos in front of people, because this is what happens. Okay, additional warning, the RT cannot open file, no such file exists. This is why you don't, okay, thankfully this is an easy problem. It's because my data actually sits here. Let's go edit. Okay, so I do all my work on a machine and then hope it lands on my laptop just right. All right, don't do that. It is fighting. All right. So I'm going to quickly go and get rid of this code. Okay. So once we've selected, we're going to bring up a navigator, I hope. A little bit of a prayer. Okay, so here, essentially we're back into the Power Query experience. It says, well, hey, these are all the data sets that you have exposed. Now, you might want to think about this. If you have a lot of data sets, we tend to create data sets and then maybe not remove them as we're sort of performing those cleansing functions. You might want to be careful of that. But we'd only select the ones that we're interested in. Thankfully, I only have a single data set here. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to go and load. And we're going to load this data in. Okay. And now we've ingested our data. So we might have wanted to perform some sort of cleansing functions. Obviously, we spend a lot of time in mashup, and Power Query uses its own, or Power BI has its own mashup engine called Power Query, exactly from Excel. And this is kind of what it looks like. And we can do it in a very visual format. Okay. So unlike R, we've got a very Excel-like experience, and that is on purpose, where we can go and perform some tasks. I'm just going to go and get rid of some of these columns. You know, we can go and remove columns. I can say, I know there's a couple of duds in my data. I'm going to perform the world's worst data cleanup. As a data scientist, you should be cringing. I'm just going to say, let's just go and forget about those ones. Okay. Okay. So I can go and perform all of those transformations and bring in my code. Now, I spoke about a language called M, okay, and we can essentially see it by clicking on this advanced tab. We end up with a language that looks very much like R, I'm going to say with a slight hesitation. Certainly looks a bit more like R in the way that we've sort of used it, but you can see that we've got this idea of a source, and I can execute that line of code, and from then on, it's actually the M engine performing this. And I can do a whole bunch of these other mashups, bringing in different data sources. Okay, so we're not going to do any mashing up, okay? So we're going to import this data set, okay, and I've now brought it into memory. Right. Oh, I'm going to close and apply, and it's going to import that data. You can see it's now importing it into this highly compressed column store engine, and we can kind of go and see the data. If we come into this modeling tab, we'd be able to see what the model looked like, and if we had alternative tables, we could create those sort of relationships. Okay. We're going to keep our model simple. One of the things I spoke about is that we're going to go and create these calculations or measures, as we call them, over our model. So that's simply done by right-clicking on a table and saying New Measure. I'm going to go and create a very simple measure, just that's going to count the number of passengers. And we're just going to say, well, that is very simply equal to the number of rows in the data set. Okay, so nothing particularly fancy about that, unless you put that in there. Okay, so we've got this new measure, and I can start using that in my report. Now, Power BI supports these things called implicit measures. Microsoft just guesses what you mean when you drag things onto the report. That can go south for you. And we can go and add a visual. So I'm going to quickly go and add one of those. I'm going to make it a pie chart, again, because everybody here was cringing at the idea of creating a pie chart. Let's go and use this idea of agenda, and we can very quickly start creating reports. So perhaps a shiny-like experience, okay? But anybody can do this. Anybody, any user can hopefully achieve this. We can also add other sort of chart types. I'm going to quickly go and add some sort of bar chart. We can add by age, okay? And I'm going to add the number of records, and you'll see it's done something funny. Well, it's not what I wanted, okay? Because it sees age and it sees a number, and it's, well, I know what to do with numbers. I want to add them up, okay? But that's not what we want to do with age. Adding up all the ages of the people on the Titanic isn't valid. So we're going to actually flip this into I'm going to move it from the age onto the axis, and I end up with a bar chart of everybody's age. Now, we spoke about Power BI missing some obvious things. Power BI does not have a histogram. Okay, so as a data scientist, this is probably your go-to tool of choice, more so than a bar chart. So we want to extend that ability. And the first way we have to do that is to connect to the marketplace. Now, the marketplace has a couple of pre-canned visuals, but the important thing is some of these visuals are built using R. Okay, so we're going to go to the marketplace. Again, tempting fate by trying to connect over my cell connection in this well-registered room. And I've got a histogram chart, okay, and I can go and add that to my visual. And it's going to be able, so I'm going to be able to go and add my report using this visual. Okay. So super fast is what you're saying. Super fast. Okay. So I've now got, you'll see I've got my new histogram visual. Okay, and didn't mean to do that. I'm going to go and add a new histogram visual onto my report. And I'm going to say, well, I want to go and bring on the age. Again, I'm going to have this problem of this adding up, if I can actually get it on there. Okay, so here you can see I've now got a genuine histogram. Now, one of the things that Power BI does very well is this interactive visualization. So purely by interacting with one visual, I'm going to start getting this sort of cross-filtering effect happening into other visuals. And that can be really nice for end users who don't want to understand modeling. They don't want to know how to grab the visual, but they want to play with it. Okay, so Shiny has a very similar kind of experience. And then the final version that we might want to do is because perhaps there isn't an R visual. Maybe I'm really good at visuals. That's not me, by the way. Okay, I'm going to say, well, I've got this R code here, and I want to just go and add a piece of R. So I'm going to enable that. Okay, and this is going to add a piece of R into my table. I'm going to select what columns I would like, and this is kind of what it's going to do is it's going to take a data frame, or it's going to build a data frame for me out of these two columns. Now I'm just going to go and set these aggregations. Again, you see how it thinks because I've got numbers, I want to add them up. I'm going to do that, say that. Okay. And then, because I'm really good at charting, I'm going to say plot my data's at. Okay, and that's my phone saying you're out of time. And I'm going to ignore it because she thinks I have another 30 seconds, and I'm going to take it. Okay, so I've now gone and added this little script. I'm going to click on this little play button over here, and it's going to go and hopefully create my visual. It's obviously a default plot. Okay, now why would you want to consider one or the other? Well, you'll notice that when I have genuine Power BI visuals, that we get cross-filtering. When I interact with the store-bought version, I get a level of filtering because I can engage with it, but I don't get the full filtering function, but I do not get an interactive experience out of that custom R visual because essentially a visual is just a plot of, it's just a JPEG or bitmap or whatever it is displayed to the screen. Okay, with that I am out of time, so we have questions. No questions, they're going to kick me off, but if you have questions, I'm sure we can chat about it later. Is that? All right.